Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. It's Thursday, yeah. Welcome in. I see some folks funneling in right now. If you could, as you are getting situated, getting connected to audio, if you wouldn't mind opening up the chat and then introducing yourself. So what's your name? Where are you coming from? What institution? I saw some friendly names in the registration and the RSVP form. So name, where you're coming from, and then what you teach, or whether it's courses or discipline of study. Would love to see some names in the chat. So go ahead and do that. Hello. Oh, yay, teach writing. And we'll get started in just a moment once some more people funnel in and introduce themselves. Well, thanks so much for joining us today and having this discussion on student voice, which what a timely discussion as robots try to take over the role of student voice. And I think now more than ever, it's really important for us to understand how we can empower students to want to share their voice and really encourage them to do so. I've been having a lot of conversations recently about how we can be more mindful about helping students develop a love of writing in any discipline. So before we get started today, some introductions and a huge thank you to our two panelists today. I'm joined by Dr. Amy Cruz, University of North Alabama, and then Dr. Kati Stoddard from Texas A&M. I'm so used to calling it TAMU, but I'll let both of them introduce themselves, share what they teach, and a little bit more about themselves. So Amy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Amy. I've been at University of North Alabama for 30 years, and in the biology department right now, I'm teaching primarily freshmen, and I use the Packback tools for my freshman classes, including anatomy and physiology and a pre-health orientation class, and a senior assessment seminar. So it runs the gamut from freshman all the way to senior. Kati?
Howdy, I'm Kati Stoddard. I teach at Texas A&M University. I am an Instructional Associate Professor in the Department of Plant Pathology and Microbiology, but I'm neither one of those. I am an environmental scientist teaching in the Bioenvironmental Sciences undergraduate program. I'm also the Associate Department Head for that program. So I teach an introduction level to environmental science called Introduction to Bioenvironmental Sciences. And I also teach a higher level course for juniors and seniors called Sampling and Environmental Monitoring. But I'm mainly using Packback in my lower level course because one, it's a core curriculum course. It's high enrollment. I've got about 200 students in it. And I teach it both online, face-to-face, or I teach it both online asynchronously and face-to-face. And I have those two sections running at the same time in the fall and in the spring.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and my background is in teaching. I was a K-12 teacher. I taught high school chemistry and physics. And I think when we talk about writing, sometimes it's not as common to have writing as a core part of the curriculum in a STEM course outside of maybe a mandated lab report, and really excited to have two professors here today who prioritize writing in STEM courses that doesn't just look like a lab report in a way that really encourages students to connect the material to their everyday lives. So that's exactly what this conversation will look like today, is how do we provide students with the right structures, tools, and then encouragements to write about things that interest them most and share their unique voice. And then how do we also help them develop that voice? Because if they're anything like me, they're probably a little bit scared of writing and a little bit bad at it and need a little bit more support to get confident in their writing skills. So as an agenda today, we're going to talk about the power of inquiry and student autonomy, and specifically talk a little bit about Packback questions. And I think most folks in attendance today have either used or are using Packback questions. So we'll just briefly touch on inquiry-based learning. And then we're going to talk about writing and specifically feedback in deep dives. And then Amy and Kati will both talk about how they implement both together and advice they'd give to instructors who are looking to implement both together, what they've learned about implementing both together. And then we'll end with a Q&A. And I'll also keep in mind, if you do have questions, to post them in the Q&A. I'll make sure that we answer them throughout the session and then also at the end. Awesome. Hi, John. Good to see you again. So let's get started. We're actually going to do a poll right now, which is, what challenges have you faced fostering meaningful discussion and engagement in your classroom, whether it's virtual or IRL in real life, and click all that applies. So I went ahead and launched the poll, so you can open up the poll there and answer whatever issues you run into facilitating discussion. And I think this will be really helpful for us to understand as we're talking about discussion on Packback questions, some things we're running into. I'll wait for a few more responses, then I'll go ahead and share results here. Looks like the most popular answer this far. I know I'm the only person who could see the live results. Most popular answer thus far is consistent engagement from capitalized all students. And not just your one really excited student who answers every single possible question in the discussion, which was often me. Let a few more answers come in. All right, thanks so much. And we'll have polls throughout the session just to kind of get a pulse check of where everyone's at. But yeah, it looks like across the board pretty even, with some heavy emphasis on consistent engagement from all students. So we'll definitely come back to that as a talking point. Just a little bit of background on Packback questions. Packback questions, if you don't know the origin story, it's actually pretty wild. It was built as a community building tool for students who are all using the same textbook. That's how this concept was born. And what we figured out was that the power of inquiry and curiosity really does help reach all students, not just the most excited students about your subject matter, but all students. And the results of using Packback questions are astounding. We've run research and we've seen lower or higher A's, lower D's and F's. We've seen better engagement as compared to an LMS discussion. And all of these results are only possible because of an inquiry-based, student-owned approach to the assignment. So I want to briefly just touch on self-determination theory, which is at the core of Packback's platform. And I think it's at the core of a lot of our instructional pedagogy as, you know, folks in this room, which is in order for students to want to do something, they need to feel purpose and connectedness to the subject matter. They need to have some form of autonomy. So I always try to give students choice in what they do. And they also need to feel good at it. I don't know about you, but once I fail something like the 10th time, I'm going to quit, right? I'm not going to persist 100 times. There is going to be a breaking point. So we do need to make sure that our students are able to feel mastery, or else they're going to quit on us. And what this looks like in Packback is students asking their own questions and us giving them feedback as they write. And the instructor, right, making sure that they're engaging with a few posts a week or for a few minutes a week to drive that passion for the subject matter. So I want to turn to our panelists here and ask a question about how they've been, I think, both as instructors impacted by an inquiry student-driven approach to discussion, and then also what they've seen in their students. So I don't know if Kati, Amy, who would want to start us off, but yeah, I want to speak specifically the student impact of putting them in the driver's seat and how that's impacted your students and your instruction.
I'll let you go, Kati.
Okay. So what I've noticed, I moved away from exams right around when the pandemic hit, because A&M went online for a brief period of time. And honestly, I just didn't want to have to worry about moderating online exams for 200 plus students, and I didn't want to crash an LMS. So I opted to move away from exams. And so I've been doing in my classes and having students have the opportunity to create things that help them practice the content that they're reading, the videos that they're watching, the lectures that they're attending. And what I've noticed is that students are much more engaged and excited to come to class and excited to talk about class. And when they have an option to choose. So when I give them a choice of, you have this topic, take it where you want to take it. So in my class, I'm using the discussions, the Packback questions. We've replaced some reading quizzes. So every week they're required to read 1 to 2 chapters. And some weeks they do reading quizzes and some weeks they do these Packback questions. And I asked them like a broad open-ended question at the beginning of the week, saying, what questions do you have about chapters 5 and 6? And I give them like a short video to watch that is not from the content, but it's out in the world of this issue out in the world happening right now. And what are your thoughts? And what I've noticed is the students take it in places that I never would have thought. Like they have the opportunity to express their interests in ways that are not possible in the classroom because there's not enough time for everyone to talk about everything that they're thinking about. We just don't have that time in class. So I have 50 minutes 3 times a week. And so it's really fascinating to see that they're really interested. They have these ideas and they have these questions that really show that they're engaged, and they're asking more than, hey, what's the definition of this? They're asking, why does this matter? Or how can this be solved? Or what is the implication of this? And then they get to interact with each other and push that conversation further. There was an example a few weeks ago. A student asked great questions about the water cycle. And I honestly, it kind of slipped because I've got 200 plus students. And I went back to her like a week and a half later and I was like, do you still have these questions? She's like, oh, no. It got answered in the Packback. I was like, oh, okay, well, great. And then I went back and I was like, oh, well, that's beautiful. And I made a comment, and it was just, it really helps just them invest in and kind of get involved in the material. And if they don't do that, then it's purely academic, and I'm wanting them to be more involved.
Absolutely. I love that. And yeah, Amy, what are your thoughts?
Well, to take some of the things that Kati said, with my, I found this semester with my human anatomy and physiology class, as you would expect, you cannot cover everything. And I use the Packback weekly assignments to do topic of the week, which is related to whatever it is that we're talking about, or it could also be something that I hear about. I listen to NPR, and I've gotten a number of topics, some related to what we are talking about this week. And I use that as kind of the way to spur those deeper discussions into a topic. And if you think about it, the number of students in that anatomy class are all going to be wanting careers in health. And so I think it's important also for them to be able to take something that is said in class and to run with it and find out more information, to be more curious about it. And I think that has definitely helped. So as you see from what's projected, I do topic of the week every week. So this week, literally this week, I said, let's talk about CTE. I'm a big pro football fan. And so I've used Damar Hamlin's incident as a topic, also the CTE to kind of force the students to think just outside of the classroom and think of a real life, if not application, but at least a real life example of how this material, affects them or could affect somebody else.
I love that. And I was chatting with Amy that I like giving students kind of this topic of the week, question of the week, our starting point, because we want them to explore applications of the course material. Sometimes if you don't give them train tracks, they're either going to just get on the wrong train. You know what I mean? They'll go in a completely different direction, or they just won't stay on track, right? So we want them to apply the material. We don't want them to just like regurgitate what we're saying in class, but we want to give them starting points and also model what's appropriate when it comes to application. I think this is a great example of modeling. So I love question of the week. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And the second question I want to ask, and I think context is, for years, Packback has been using AI to give students coaching and help build skills so that they could communicate their voice and communicate their ideas. And who entered the chat but generative AI, right? And it's probably quite tempting for a rushed, busy college student to decide, I'm not going to do this assignment. Maybe I'll just pull, copy and paste or use a generator. There are a million different, this is not a new behavior in students, but there's now this new avenue to delegate their work elsewhere. So I do feel like detectors and prevention is very, very important, but I also think that there is an onus on the educator to really ask ourselves, am I setting my student up to want to share their own opinion and to want to share their unique voice? So I just want to hear from you two about how do you approach, whether it's discussion or writing assignments or really anything in your course, but what strategies have you implemented to make students want to share their voice and not someone else's or something else's? I think Kati, either way,
Go ahead,
whoever has
Kati.
an opinion.
So I think it starts at the beginning. So I learned this when I moved away from exams. The first semester is a bit of a rough patch. I mean, we're in the pandemic as well, so there's a lot of rough things happening. But I've discovered that, like, if you're going to change the script to what has been standard for most people's education for a long time, one, they need some time to adjust, and they also need to understand the why. And that I found is super important to talk to them about. Why are we doing class this way? Why am I asking you to engage with your peers? Why am I doing the class the way that I'm doing it? And so in the beginning of the semester, my first week of class, I don't talk about my syllabus until probably the last day of the week. What we do is we spend the first day talking about, hey, this is the class. Like, let's get excited about this topic. Why are we here? What are you excited to learn about? This is what's happening in the world and how it's going to come into play. And then we also we spend a whole day talking about what is learning. And we talk about, how does learning happen? How have you had good learning experiences in the past? When have you learned the most? Like, we have a whole interactive lesson about what is learning. And then from there, we start scaffolding out, all right, if this is learning, if learning is more than just regurgitating facts that you read in a textbook and telling me what, X plus Y is, then how are we going to apply that and learn deeper with more lasting learning and build lifelong learning throughout the semester? And so I think that it really starts at the beginning of helping the students know, why are we doing this? Why do you have to engage with your peers and ask deep questions? So that's my approach.
I mean, I agree with Kati. I think putting that value of why, not only, I guess it makes it meaningful for them. It gives them a reason to actually do the assignment and to put the effort into it. And even for me, for like the anatomy, like you said, it's taking this information, going out there, finding information, but also perhaps even for me, maybe dispelling some of their own myths about a particular topic, and understanding that it's not just opinion. You have to have citation-based information. You can't, it didn't come from grandma. It comes from, the Mayo Clinic, for example, and to help them see how to take information and dissect out that information, what is science-based and what is opinion-based, and then also allow them to make their own decisions about that.
I love that too. It's almost like, if you take this assignment seriously, and if you really, invest in building these skills, you're going to be the best debater of all time, right? So you're kind of helping them understand the value in learning these skills, whether it's in your classroom or outside of that. So I love that. And, And something I'll share, I don't know if anybody's familiar with this book, Teach Like a Champion. I don't know if it's still used at all, but I did a secondary teaching program. So I was thrown into the classroom and then I learned how to teach. And they use this book, Teach Like a Champion. And there's this one, component of it, it's explain the why. And they really drill home that if we don't explain why we're doing something in a classroom, students won't do it, or they'll do it, but they won't get anything out of it. And it all starts with the why. And that's very much a K-12 book. It is not a higher education book, but the students who graduate from my classroom, they're in your classroom 18 months later, right? So they're not too far removed from an educator that's constantly explaining the why and maybe doing a little bit of hand-holding with some of these more conceptual thought processes. So I think it's important to realize that our students in higher education classrooms are not that removed from high school. And we do need to scaffold things like explain why we're doing an assignment and not just assume they're going to get that. That's a huge learning for me, at least, when I realized they haven't grown up that much in like the 1 year between my classroom and yours. The other thing that came up when we were chatting earlier is this concept of having students talk about themselves as a step one to encourage them to share voices. And I think, Kati, you had chatted about this. So yeah, do you want to just speak a little bit to, having students talk about themselves a little bit?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the question was, how do we get students to open up and how do we get students to engage in class? And I said, well, the first thing is you ask them about the one thing they want to talk about, which is themselves. Like everyone likes to talk about themselves. And so we both teach science classes, both Amy and I. And one thing that I found is that I have an assignment somewhere else in my curriculum where I asked them that I asked them to explain a science topic using course terms, explain this environmental issue. But then I want you to tell me, what is your worldview? What is your perspective on this? And then they have to explain how they formed their worldview. So they have to be able to explain the topic, explain the course terms that help explain what that topic is and understand the science around it. And then I tell them, well, what is it that you believe around this? And it gives them the opportunity to, as Amy said, discern fact from opinion. But it also builds an environment where I'm asking them about their thoughts. I'm asking them, this is the science. Now let's talk about it. Because in the grand scheme of things, most of my students are not going to go on to become academics. Most of my students are not going to go on to they're probably, what the grand scheme of things and the hope is that they're going to become educated citizens out in the world living their lives. And what I am ultimately striving for is educated citizens that can read what's happening in the world, read the news, and discern fact from opinion, and then make educated decisions about it. And so we're fostering that in the class by asking them and giving them opportunities to express their opinions in a respectful way, using science in an accurate way, and to have discourse, civil discourse with their colleagues, with their peers. And so I think it's modeling something that I think higher ed is really ultimately striving for, is an educated population.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. When I've used Packback in a non-majors biology course, I mean, my whole point of that class is to become scientifically literate, and so that you can understand what's out there. Again, discern fact from fiction and make your own decisions about this rather than just parroting someone else's opinion about a topic.
I love that. And I think too, if anybody in attendance right now uses either the full platform or questions plus instruct, so if you have those instruct tools, one of my favorite application of homework polling, which isn't the live quick poll, but an in-depth poll, is have them actually just either do a mental health check-in or talk about themselves, because it's it automatically positions you as this person who's I think invested in their education. And when we think about what is an educator, it's someone who delivers content, but someone who's also driving, I think, passion for like, educating on the content. So that's just a plug for using homework polls if you're not using them right now. So I want to shift and I want to talk about deep dives for a moment. And before I tell the story of deep dives, I'm going to do a quick poll. And again, this is similar, check all that apply. I want to hear, what challenges are we facing, have we faced in fostering? Oh, that is the wrong question. That's embarrassing. The real question is, which aspects of student writing do you find the most challenging to develop? Whoops. So yeah, which aspects of writing do we find most difficult to develop? Grammar mechanics, ability to find and use high quality sources, ability to communicate clear ideas, and that can mean many things. Are their sentences coherent? Are their paragraphs coherent? Do you actually understand what they're saying through their language? Properly addressing all areas of a prompt or rubric. I'm always shocked when a student doesn't realize that the assignment prompt was 2 pages and they only end up doing 1 page of the assignment. Comprehensive analysis, and then just writing confidence. So I'll give a few more moments to answer the question. Awesome. It looks like ability to communicate clear ideas is coming in as a top contender here, and addressing all areas of a writing prompt and rubric. Yep. All right. I'm going to go ahead and share the results there. So a little bit of background on Packback deep dives. So Packback, when we first launched questions in 2015, the intention was not to become a writing platform. But what happened is, I would say over the last few years, I would get feedback from professors constantly of, my students are just becoming better writers through using Packback questions because they're getting these at-bats at writing. They're getting feedback from the AI. It'd be so cool if Packback built a tool that did long form writing. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that over the course of a year, the years that I worked directly with professors. And, back in early 2022, we decided to move forward with what is an incubation team, which is a team of engineers, about 2 of them, that would run at a problem or run at a task, see what they could do in, a few months, and ultimately deliver value to our professor base. And when we, decided to move forward with the incubation team, we decided to move forward with what was called, I think at the time, what was it called? Packback Papers, which we've rebranded to Deep Dives. And during our research of how to build this tool, why to build this tool, this was the most common feedback we got from instructors, which was, I have students from a wide variety of educational backgrounds, and it feels unfair to hold them to the same standard of writing skill, but then it also is unfair to not hold them to the same standard, right? So this concept of we need to level the playing field. Grading is terrible. And you know what? If my students just had a paper that was free of grammatical errors and was structurally sound, I probably would save time grading, because half of the time I'm spending grading is just on structurally sound. So with that, we developed Packback Deep Dives. Packback Deep Dives is a writing tool meant for more long form writing, but it also can be used for 1-page journals, case studies, lab reports, whatever works for you. The way that I always communicated it is, if you want to assign writing and you want to grade it manually for content, you should be using Packback Deep Dives. What Deep Dives enables is a writing tutor for students, a research assistant for students, so giving them credibility on their sources and also helping them cite sources, and then a grading assistant for instructors. So the value of deep dives is really in building confident writers. We do give some grading assistance there. And a caveat, or something I like to communicate, is this is a very new product. We launched it in a beta this fall. It's publicly available for the very first time this spring. You have Packback Questions, which has been around since 2015, that has had a lot of monthly improvements to user experience and tools. So if you're interested in deep dives, I would go in with the mindset of, it's not perfect. Not everything that you might think should be available in a writing tool is going to be available, but it's getting better every single day. So without further ado, I just want to hear from our panelists, how's it been using deep dives? It's a brand new tool. It is, I would say fundamentally like a Packback pedagogy vessel, but it is new. Want to just hear how it's been using it, and then any impact thus far on the student writing skill and maybe your own grading experience. And I have up here examples of deep dives that you've facilitated in your course. So Kati, if you want to get started with, your experience with deep dives.
Sure. I love this program. It makes my life as an instructor, and especially grading, and I have TAs that help me with this. It streamlines everything, because essentially what it is we don't have to worry about like all of the structure and the technicalities of the writing. Really, we can dive in and help the students on the content, which saves you so much time when you have a lot of students. I've done three deep dives now. So this last one was, that's the second one I did. What's in your personal care products? So this was for the section when we were talking about environmental toxicology and chemicals in the environment and chemicals in commercial use. And the other thing that I like about it is it can take what you do in Packback questions, where you have the opportunity to give them that flexibility of, hey, I want to explore something that I'm interested in, and them to have ownership and autonomy over it. And so with this one, I asked them to look at personal care products in their home, and to investigate one of the ingredients and to do some research about it. And I gave them websites, and then they had to write about, all right, well, what did you find about your personal care products, and what did you learn? And but it's a really nice way for the student to, I think, as a student, I would find it very helpful, because you get feedback in the moment when you're writing about, hey, how could you improve this writing? And there's also, what you can't see here is there's guiding questions, and the students are asked to answer the guiding questions as they write, to try to make sure that they address everything in the topic. And so I think that this has really helped the students, one, to learn how to write. Like, it's one thing to form your thoughts about what you want to write. It's another thing to like put that down on paper. So the AI that's helping the students as they're in the midst of writing really helps them with flow and paragraph form and grammar and syntax and all of those things that I would spend hours I don't have helping them do. And I would probably have to focus on the ones that have the least skills and not the ones in the middle ground, and then can't praise the ones, like I can't meet everyone where they're at. So this really helps eliminate that problem, but also allows the students to do the work that they need to do with the feedback in the moment. And it's kind of like writing your first draft and sitting down with a writing consultant in the moment. And if they really utilize the resource, they should come out with a stronger writing product. Now, they could just ignore it, and I've seen that happen too, but most of them pay attention and use it to write the best essay they can, which is super helpful.
I love that. Amy.
So this is the second semester I've used deep dives. I was in the beta trial last semester with freshmen. And as you can see on the right here, in fact, I just got finished grading this last week, asking them to pick a recent advance in medicine that interests them. And not only did I get for a number of them why this was of interest to them, bringing in some personal history, but one of the things that I found fascinating about this was that I have about 50 students in the class, and about 45 of them, they chose all different recent medical advances. There were very few repeats, which to me amazed me. I didn't realize there were that many advances out there. So from a personal perspective, it gave me a lot of information that I probably wouldn't have been able to get any other way. And again, I think it brings this closer to home for them, because I did say, what interests you? And again, a number of them shared why this particular topic was of interest to them. And I also used it, I discussed it on Monday in class, and I went through the list. We probably spent 20 minutes or so. And I'm like, these are things that you guys need to be thinking about for the future, because, you know, things like using AI in medicine and 3D printing and, you know, new drugs and abuse of drugs, like some of the weight loss drugs that, or for type 2 diabetes that people are using now for weight loss, and the lack of supply of those particular drugs and things like that. So kind of bringing it to the forefront of what's happening, and trying to get them interested in that.
And I love what both of you have done here, because the only way we can, I think, continually ask our students to write and write their own voice and want to write is if we have them connected to their personal lives. But then also, to your point, you're learning things as you go. So what it does is it makes sure that as educators, we're not reading the same thing 50 times and perhaps having a negative experience ourselves in the grading process, and we're learning and we're connecting with our students. So there's just such value in, if you don't already have a writing assignment, having a fun personal writing assignment, because it can bring joy, right? And I think usually as instructors, we're not like writing assignment equals joy. That doesn't check out, but it can, right? And it's mutually beneficial for our students and us when it's a fun, personable writing assignment. Figured I'd ask this. Any stories yet on a particular student or group of students benefiting from deep dives thus far? Anything to the student experience that has stood out in the last few weeks or few probably months, Amy? Not to put you on the spot, either of you, but didn't know if you had a story.
I do have a story, but it's related to the topic of the week. Is that okay, or do you want me to wait?
Yeah, no, I'm okay with that.
Okay, so back at the beginning of the semester, when all this was happening with Damar Hamlin, and listening to NPR, and they talked about how there was a resurgence of people wanting to learn CPR and the use of AED and all of that. So I posed a question to the class, you know, related to this topic, and I said, so that brings me to the question of what skills should you have as a human being in order to be able to help others? And although I meant it to be related to medicine, I was thrilled with a lot of the responses. I mean, I had the how to identify someone who's having a stroke, how to stop bleeding in an individual. But then I got other things like how to change a tire, how to balance a checkbook, just which I was not expecting from that, but I was like perfectly fine with it because I didn't limit it. And we talked about that in class. And I think hopefully as the students read through these comments, they hopefully were thinking, oh, you know what? I don't know how to do that. Or I need to learn how to do that. So I'm hoping it had some benefit in that respect. Again, it was totally unexpected for me. But they just took it and they just ran with it. And this was back at the very beginning of the semester.
I love that.
Kati?
So I was thinking about, I was trying to think if I had an example with Packback, and I had one recently, and it was with, so one thing you can do with Packback deep dives is you can check a box that says a student can't submit if they don't write the required amount of words. And I did that, and then I got an email after the due date from a student that sent me their essay. It's like, I couldn't submit this in time because it wouldn't accept it because it was worth less. Like I couldn't submit it, and I don't have enough time right now to write what I need to. Will you just accept this? And I sat with that for a little while, and I ultimately decided we're not going to do that. So I sent the student an email back, and I said, just FYI, I have this other policy, which I find very helpful to share with other educators. It's called the no questions asked policy, where students have a Google form that they can fill out within, and they fill it out for the date that they want to an extension on an assignment for something happening in their life. And I will give them free 24-hour extension. I told her, you will lose more points by not having the words that you need, like the written amount, than by having it late. So fill out your no questions asked policy, submit it late, and put the work in that you need to put in. And she ultimately did that, and everything was fine. But when I had looked at her essay that she had emailed me, I was like, you wrote half of what you needed to write. You'll lose way more points this way than if you would just put the effort in to write what you need to write and get the points. So I really appreciate that there's a stopgap measure, that if you want that it forces them to recognize that they haven't met the minimum requirements, and they can't turn it in unless they do. So that was it was an interesting learning opportunity for us both.
Sorry, you go.
I was going to say, one of the things that I did notice about my last deep dive was I had a 500-word limit, and the best essays, the ones that were most well-developed, not surprising, went way above the 500-word limit. I had some students that were like 501, and I docked them for content because I'm like, this could have been so much better had you quit looking at the word count and actually, like Kati said, just written the essay the way it should have been written. And hopefully it'll have some benefit for those students who are just trying to squeak in under, but I think I'm going to put that limit on it next time.
It's helpful. It's a nice
And
thing.
like thinking back to the beginning of this concept of like sharing the why, I think even something as simple of like, this is why the assignment should be 2 pages. And this is why, if you submit 1 page, you have not done the assignment, because you can't actually do the prompt justice with 100 words. You need 200 words, right? So I think like even that explanation of, hey, if I took it now, you would do worse. It's just, you haven't done the assignment. You needed that much text in order to complete the assignment goal at the end of the day. So you've both been using questions and deep dives this term together. And I have here a summary of how Kati is implemented both in her introduction to environmental science. Yes, that's right. I did it. I know there's a bio and then an environment, which is Packback questions. I think there are 11 open possible deadlines. You drop the 1 or 2 lowest, where it's roughly 13.5% of the grade. 4 deep dives assignment at 20% of the grade. And then I know you do also use match and message to give students some, hey, it looks like you didn't, complete the whole assignment. So I just love to hear from you both separately, just your overall takeaways from using both tools together instead of just one or the other. And then any advice you'd give instructors who are interested in using both tools together, but want to make sure they're doing it wisely. So I don't know if anybody wants to start first.
So my thoughts were that one thing that I've noticed, especially as I'm an early adopter of all sorts of learning technologies. And one thing I've realized is that students kind of need to like step into the water. They need to wade in. And Packback questions is a nice way to wade into the water of, hey, we're going to do class a little bit differently, and I'm asking you to engage in a way that you may not have familiarity with, and we're also going to be using this program. And so I feel that starting with questions and doing questions, I think we did questions for like 2 or 3 weeks before we even did a Packback deep dive. So they got familiar with the platform, they got familiar with this is how the system works. And as I engage more, really, one of the things that I love about the way that Packback works is they get so much feedback when they're writing, but there's also grace and points that are come along just from making the effort. Like it's not all like there's so much help there. So with Packback questions, we didn't talk about this, but they have to earn a certain curiosity score, which means that they wrote in such a way that would extend a conversation if you were having it one-on-one. So they were asking questions and engaging in their Packback questions in a way that helped promote the discussion moving forward. And so that gets you a higher curiosity score. And so the Packback questions, it grades itself. I have no grading involved. So if they earn the right amount of curiosity points, they get a set number of points for their original post, the original question that they put in when I gave them a question of the week. And then they get, if they respond to the number of peers that I tell them, which is 2, asking them curious questions about their curious questions, then they get the remainder of their points. And so I really appreciate that it is rewarding the effort and helping them, like giving them feedback on how you can ask more curious questions. How can you engage in a way and write this in a way that shows deeper learning rather than just superficial questions. And that I feel like was a great preparation for the deep dives, which is when I'm asking them to dive a little bit deeper. And we're going to think about that question, and we're going to take it a step further. We're going to bring in research. And I think the 1 and then the 2, like the Packback questions, give them familiarity with that, and then try the deep dives. I think that's a really nice transition, and it helps reinforce this idea of, hey, we are asking questions, we're being curious and open-minded, and we're also going to make sure that we discern fact from fiction or fact from opinion.
I also found that well, starting out with Packback questions, the first week was very much a learning curve for them. And I ended up not counting that toward their grade, but allowing them to, maybe experience a little of the frustration of the AI moderating a post and things like that, so that they could get a feel for it before it actually counted for real for them. I've only done 2 deep dives right now. I'm a little bit behind, actually a lot behind, but and I'm gonna probably end up with 3 in the class, but I just didn't schedule things. I do the deep dives when I feel I think of a topic. So it's very much not something that I assign at the very beginning of the class. But I think having that grace period at the beginning, that one sort of Packback week 0, if you will, helps them understand, what they need to do. And the other thing I found out, and the reason I went to sort of topic of the week was, again, to try to focus them onto something that I wanted them to discuss, because otherwise they were all over the place. And I also noticed too that there were some students posting questions that were totally irrelevant to my topic, but the way the AI graded it, it went, oh yay, 70 curiosity points, when it wasn't related to the topic. So it helped to focus them in on something to talk about. So I would definitely do that Packback week 0, if you will, to get them into understanding how this all works.
Yeah, and my advice too is always like build in the time in your, like, kind of, if you would think about a Packback syllabus, but also like just the awareness that your students are probably going to do something silly the first time they try to do it. So what's your plan to get them back on track? So like a great example I always see is students don't realize that they need to press this big red button that says ask a new question in order to get full credit. You know what I mean? So what's the plan to get them back on track if they do have a rocky start? I don't know if either of you have recommendations for, just setting them up for success as best as possible day one, and then kind of getting the train back on the tracks if you need to.
I did have a problem with, at the very beginning, I would put topic of the week, and then they would respond to that instead of that ask the question, and we had to have some discussion about that. But I mean, that worked out fine. I went back and adjusted their grade because it was my fault for not telling them specifically how to do it. I talked about, I guess, sort of generalities, and I think that worked out. Also showing them that I made mistakes and was willing to, okay, I'll go in and, adjust your Packback grade because of that. And then after that, I didn't, but I don't know if that made any sense.
The
No, a
same
little bit
thing
of grace.
happened to me. Yeah, so you'll ask your like question of the week, and there's a place where students can respond, and it seems intuitive that that's where you want them to respond, but that's not actually how you move the conversation forward and have students like end up in conversation groups. And so I ended up making a video because I teach this class online asynchronously and face-to-face, and I ended up making a video and just sending it out to everyone and say, all right, this is it. You have to go up to the top, you have to press this button, and then you can do it. And then I also fixed the points. And you can also go in and message the students that submitted in the wrong place and just say, hey, you need to, if you could just copy and paste this back where this needs to go. And yeah, everyone's on a learning curve in week 0 to 1 and 2.
Absolutely. And two, for those who are not technically savvy and love the concept of making a video, but don't want to make a video, I cannot tell you how many times I go into a Zoom by myself, share my screen, record, and just record it, train of thought, and you have video, right? You don't need special software. You really just need like a Zoom account and a laptop. So want to briefly talk about the roadmap for Packback. And then I want to come back to the Q&A because we have 2 outstanding questions I'd love to answer. And keep in mind, this is not our entire roadmap. This is just some, I think, fun talking points. And this is for both questions and deep dives. So done as of this week is on deep dives, the ability to score submissions, but then hold grades and release them all at once. That wasn't existent before, it is existent now. We have improved grammar feedback algorithms coming. I think one thing that's become very clear is when you first launch a product, you're not going to be able to cover every single edge case, right? And what's right in science writing is not right in literature, right? Or in a different course. So more customizable feedback is what we're looking at here. This is something I'm very excited about. So if you are using deep dives right now, you are limited to this is your rubric for content and ideas. You're going to be able to have multiple content and ideas rubric categories with a scale of not just 4, if you want 3 or a 5-point scale. Gradebook sync for deep dives, improved inline citation experience, pre-writing questions in deep dives, and then updates to our Packback questions gradebook experience. So if you're a questions user and you wish that you could rename an assignment from Packback 1 to Civil War, or that you can extend a deadline for just one student, or you can have week 1 Packback work 5 points, but week 2 Packback work 20 points. These are all things that we're going to make more available in our questions grading experience. So a lot of really cool things coming. Again, this is not everything. This is just things that I pulled from our roadmap. And then as a reminder, if you are interested in learning more about our free suite of tools called Teach with GPT, you can access that Packback Labs. These are just some tools that use GPT, but in a professor-friendly way. So I want to answer 2 questions that popped up. And the first was, have you gotten an AI alert in deep dives yet? And if so, how did you handle it? So have we gotten any alerts yet? I'm thinking it's probably related to AI generated text, plagiarism, or just anything else.
Yes, I have. I've gotten 2. And I had an alert that there was a possibility that the text was generated by AI. And so I haven't actually been able to resolve the situation yet. But really what I appreciate is that when you get the alert, it gives you guidance as to 1, why did you get this alert? And 2, what do they suggest? And really what it is reading over the essay for the student. And in my luck, I have the nice thing about pairing these things is I can go back and see, how did the student write all their questions up until now? Did the student have a previous Packback deep dive that I can go look there? So so I do it by going and looking at their previous work. And then if I have any questions, then I will absolutely just confront the student and tell them, hey, your stuff has been flagged for this. Would you care to talk to me about this? It's a tricky ground. I am very much treading into new area that I will gladly take suggestions because this is something very new for me. But I'm just glad that there's a tool that flags it that this could have generated from GTP.
I have not. Although I have had, obviously with STEM writing, the AI catches what it thinks are spelling errors, which are just basically scientific words. And in this last deep dive, I had a lot of students who must have ignored what the AI said, even though the words were spelled correctly, but I think they could dismiss that. But I have not had the other yet.
Yeah, and I think we've done webinars over the past few months about GPT, and the number one advice I give to instructors, they're like, I don't know how to navigate AI, use of generative AI. It's sticky. I don't know what to do. Is exactly what you said, Katie. Is like, if you have a baseline of what student voice sounds like, and you can take something that's been flagged and compare it to that, that's one of the best ways to approach the conversation. And then at some point, you just have to ask them questions. You have to set up that time to meet with them and ask them questions about their process. How'd you find these sources? What was your writing process like? And if they're struggling to communicate that, that's probably an indication that something fishy is going on. But if they're able to communicate it, they just submitted generic writing that may as well have been written by a robot, is really what that is. But it might have been their own voice if they're able to talk through their process. And we have to accept that that's definitely a reality. Another question came up, which was a concept of using Packback in an upper level course. So I think, Amy, you use in an upper level course. Any thoughts on impact, or maybe a way that you differentiate between your intro versus your upper level?
Well, I teach a senior assessment seminar, which is designed to get the students ready for the major field test in biology. So it's a review of all biology concepts. And so, by week, we have different topics, viruses, animals, plants. So I do topic of the week with that. Although what I've been doing is also trying to make it current, like current advances in plant biology, current advances in evolution, or I think this week my question was about extinction, animal and plant extinction. So to try to make it more current so that it doesn't seem like, they're, what are the stomata of the plant leaf for? Not basic stuff that they could have, to try to also force them, since they're about to graduate, to force them to look at current things in biology to try to keep them engaged.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a great example, or I think a great point, is that if you're teaching an upper level course, these means that these students are about to graduate, and they're going to need to probably be able to write about the subject matter with good quality research, but then also like probably a little bit of opinion, right? They're going to have to draw conclusions, and giving them that practice, I think, is super important. Well, I think we got to all of the questions. I want to thank our panelists so much for joining today, for number one, being like, pioneers of this new product that you didn't know if it was going to make your life terrible or amazing, and you took a chance on us. So we appreciate you. And yeah, thank you for sharing your experiences. I greatly appreciate it. And then everyone who attended, thank you. If you're new to Packback, you can email Curious. If you are a Packback user, you can always request some time with your experience manager to hop in. But thank you so much. Really appreciate you, and everybody have a wonderful Thursday and a good weekend. If this is your Friday, it is for Amy and I. We're not working tomorrow. We're taking the day off.
Thank you all.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.